I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
You want answers?
You have offended my family.
I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth.
And you have offended a Shaolin temple.
You can't handle the truth.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Radical Rant.
Well, folks, today it's time to embark on a rant that might not win me any friends, but I got to do it because I just can't resist addressing what I consider the Tea Party antics of Robert Corry out there in Denver and some of these people involved with the No on Proposition AA campaign. Just to fill you in, if you haven't followed this in great detail, Colorado passed Amendment 64, and it was the regulate marijuana like alcohol, okay? And the idea was, we're going to tax and regulate marijuana. We're going to take down the black market. And a big part of the selling of Amendment 64 was the taxation that would raise money for schools. It would earmark money for schools, earmark a bunch of money, raise a bunch of money, pay for its own regulation, and so forth. Now, in the meantime, after Amendment 64 passed, there was also, well, maybe not after, maybe it was before, but got the chronology is really not important, but also in context, understand there were a couple of audits of the state's medical marijuana systems as to how well they were performing and how well they were living up to their promises of testing and carding and so forth, all these different things, regulating basically. And the audits painted a very bad picture of the Medical Marijuana Enforcement Division, of there not being basically enough money to pay for all the regulations that were promised. You promise a regulation, you got to have regulators. You got to have people and bureaucracies and paperwork and, jobs of people that are making sure the regulations are being followed, inspectors and so forth. So in the context of that already being on the minds of the public and Amendment 64 passing with this whole tax and regulate situation, promise money for schools, promise to fix things, we also introduce another wrinkle of Colorado's politics, and that is Tabor. This is a tax amendment they've got in Colorado, passed by, the typical anti-tax brigade. Taxes per se are bad. It's bad when we're taxed because government is bad. So this got passed a while back that says if you pass an amendment, you pass an initiative, you can't also pass the taxes in it. You got to tax it separately. That's got to be a separate thing. That is, anything that raises taxes has to be voted on as a separate issue. Okay, so in that context, Amendment 64 passes with promises of taxation to fix schools. Medical marijuana didn't raise enough money in its regulation to take care of stuff. And now we got to vote on this thing called Proposition AA in Colorado, which is the taxes for marijuana. Now, there were work groups that worked on this, had to estimate how much would regulation cost, how much is it going to cost to enforce this stuff. And what they came up with, rightly or wrongly, was an initiative that says we're going to tax 15% excise tax and 10% sales tax on top of a 3.9%, 3.9%, a pretty low state sales tax. Now, the people who are for this, which are a lot of the people that were involved with passing Amendment 64 in the first place, Brian Vicente Cederberg, and so on, are of the opinion that, hey, vote yes on AA. We promised all these taxes. We promised all this revenue. Here's how we're going to pay for it. We want to make sure it's well regulated. Federal government said if you follow these 8 guidelines, then we'll probably not raid you. And if we're going to follow the guidelines, we got to have the money for the regulators to make sure we're following the guidelines. So let's pass this tax. On the other side, you got the No on AA people, which I got to admit includes Colorado Normal, saying, no, these taxes are too high. These taxes are far too high, and this would set a dangerous precedent if these taxes were passed. It would show that you can overtax marijuana, and according to Robert Corry, he says it's a bait and switch. He says it's a bait and switch because it was sold as regulate marijuana like alcohol, but this would tax marijuana at a far greater rate than alcohol, so he claims. So I took a look at a few of the pieces of information available on this, and one of them, let's see if I can pull this up here, was the estimates of the taxes and what was this tax too high. The Coloradoan newspaper put out a Price of Vice was their article, how the proposed marijuana tax compares to alcohol. And to credit the No on AA people, the small bag of weed will still cost more than a 6-pack of beer, and the excise taxes on wholesale marijuana would be a 15% excise tax, 10% sales tax, 3.5% sales tax. Alcohol is taxed less than that. So they have that point. It's not being taxed like alcohol. However, according to the Coloradoan, marijuana would still be taxed less than a pack of cigarettes, which is subject to state and federal excise taxes of 34%. Okay. So the question that comes up here as well is a new article. Now, by the way, this Proposition AA is pretty much expected to pass. It's got very widespread support. So maybe this is just, all much ado about nothing. But the latest complaint that I had to get to here had to do with the ethics of the anti-tax campaign. Now, the proposition, the AA people, the for tax campaign has, $30,000-$40,000 in the bank, and they're not really much in the way of ads because, like I said, it's pretty much expected to pass. So there's not a whole lot of advertising campaign money that has to be done. I understand Governor Hickenlooper did a fundraising dinner that raised a whole lot of the revenue for that. The no on AA people don't have a lot of money to work with. So what they've been doing is publicity rallies, publicity stunts, where Corry and a bunch of folks are giving away free joints. They did this in Denver, the free joint anti-tax giveaway, and they did it in Boulder as well. Now, beyond just questioning the wisdom of, gee, we just passed marijuana legalization. We passed it, saying it's going to be more responsible, and to fight the taxes of it, we're going to give away joints in the public square, which people are invariably going to light up. And that's public pot smoking, which is against the law, even under Amendment 64. So maybe, if we're trying to get voters to think well of us, we shouldn't, go violating the brand new passed law in their face. I don't know. But beyond that, I wanted to get to the specific ethics complaint. This was reported in Westward today in an article called Marijuana Did Anti-Pot Tax Group Break Campaign Law? Now, the campaign law at issue here is disclosure. When you run a campaign, you've got to disclose who's donating money to you. But you also have to disclose in-kind donations. Okay? That's stuff. Like if someone donates office furniture to you or lets you use an office of theirs or a car or whatever, that also has to be disclosed. So the most recent complaint over these anti-tax joint giveaways is who gave all that marijuana? That's a political rally. That's something you gave away at a political rally. In as much as you'd give away pens or Bic lighters or whatever, you'd have to disclose if the Bic company gave you, $2,000 worth of lighters or whatever. So that's the ethics complaint. And when they looked at the records that were filed by Robert Corry for this campaign, he put down that the campaign had gotten a donation of 1 cent. 1 cent. 1 cent worth of donation to run this campaign. Okay, so he explains the 1 cent was because that he couldn't put a zero in because, and this is what he's saying, marijuana has, quote, zero value, end quote. That's right, folks. Marijuana has zero value. This is what he says, quote, under current law, marijuana cannot be sold. No recreational marijuana can be sold until January 1. And after that, only recreational marijuana grown in a licensed facility can be sold. And none of that exists now. End quote. So he says that the marijuana given away at the 2 rallies and the fundraiser with dab buses, quote, has zero value. The reason it even shows up in our disclosures is because we want to be extra transparent, and the reason its cost is set at 1 penny is because everything's done online and the program the Secretary of State uses won't accept a zero. End quote. Well, marijuana has zero value in Colorado. Makes it kind of hard to explain the home invasion robberies people suffer from people breaking in to steal something in their home that has zero value. Doesn't really make a whole lot of sense now, does it? When our reformers come up with such blatant, I don't know what to call it, but it just does not pass the laugh test. It does not do our cause any favors. And, I'm not even going to get into Corry's recent arrest at the Rockies game, where he's smoking a joint in public and mouthing off to the cop. That doesn't help us in any way. And I also wanted to get to some quotes from Colorado Normal on this, because it just fascinated me. Some of her responses as well. The head of Colorado Normal. I don't have it handy right now, and I'm running out of time. So we'll save that for another day. Perhaps I'll bring it up in hour 2. But I wanted to just bring up, to end this, the calculator. There is a calculator that Colorado Futures at Colorado State put up. And I'm putting this in the chat room right now. You can play along. This is the Colorado Futures Center's estimator at the Colorado State University. Now, the initial estimates they put in to figure out what the rate should be and how much money they'd have to raise for sales tax and for the schools and for all the promises and all, was that 79% of the medical users would transition into adult recreational. The average user consumes 3.5 ounces a year. It costs $600 to cultivate a pound of marijuana. The average retail markup would be 175%. There'd be an excise tax of 15%. And in their original estimate, an excise tax or a sales tax on top of that of 15%. That was the original goal. The retail price of an ounce of marijuana, including all taxes, would come in at $185. That's right. All this fighting and fussing and free joint giveaways and screams of, oh my God, the taxes are too high, is over an ounce of marijuana that would end up costing good quality Colorado marijuana that would cost $185 an ounce. Now, the calculator has little sliders on it. You can actually adjust it to match, whatever conditions you would so choose to add. We dropped that sales tax down to 10%, which is what the Prop AA actually is. Your retail price of an ounce of marijuana, $177. Wow. Wow, that's such heavy taxation. Ooh. So, I remember the head of Colorado Normal was saying, wouldn't want to set a precedent for other states that would then set the taxes too high. Hey, how about the precedent of we promised tax money for legalization would help schools, and then those taxes were opposed by the very people who said that would be a good idea, and then the schools don't get fixed, and then the voters in the next state, when they're told that taxing and regulating marijuana will fix their schools, will say, bullshit, look at Colorado. How about that precedent? We'll talk more about this in hour 2. We'll take your calls at 971-533-7111. For Stoney and Snap, I'm Radical Russ. Until next time,
this is the Russ Belville Show.
Take care of each other, tokers.
The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at radicalruss.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you